Hello, welcome to Miniature Realms. My name's Stuart, and in this video, we're going to take a quick look at Novus Mallum First Encounters, which was very kindly sent to me by Enviro Games Limited.
Novus Mallum, A New Evil, is the first offering from Enviro Games, a brand new environmentally focused tabletop gaming company. Themed as a high fantasy skirmish miniatures game, 2 players will be immersed in a series of narrative-driven scenarios set within the Seldar continent. The game will develop against the backdrop of a receding Great Shroud, a previously impenetrable barrier which has sealed the fallen kingdom in shadow for over 3 millennia. Enviro Games has developed the project with an environmental conscience, using paper-based components derived from sustainably managed forests, leveraging printing process to avoid oil-based feedstocks, removing oil-based plastic components wherever possible, and using miniatures produced in less harmful printing materials, molds with multiple production cycles, and the ability to reuse miscasts and sprues, which are typically otherwise discarded. The box itself is really quite nicely produced. It's very thick card with these nice printed images on either side. So you get that feel of the environmental side of the business, but also some lovely artwork, and it fully displays everything you get inside the box. The box itself is quite small as well, so they've packed quite a lot inside. So this is my first time properly opening up the box. I've had a very quick cursory look beforehand. First thing you find is all these little paper envelopes which contain the miniatures. So rather than little plastic baggies, we have them labelled in these paper envelopes and even stuck down with what looks like recyclable paper, sort of masking tape instead of sticky tape. Then the rest of the box, we have the rulebook, which we'll place to one side for a moment and have a better look later on, and all of the unit cards, which are full colour and nice and bold and large. I found the cards to be a decent thickness. They are quality items. The cards thick enough. Well, not being overly thick. I think they would stand the test of gaming. And you could cover them and get card sleeves and things like that if you wanted to, but they're definitely strong enough to stand the test of time and not use plastics, which I imagine would be what they'd be aiming to do. So you got cards for each of the units included in the game. So we've had the character already. And these are the Dwarf Guardians. That's a nice logo printed on the back there as well, and then we have the Dwarf Hammerers as well. And moving on to the gnomes, we have the Alto Mage Zika, which is the special character leading them, and then we have the Gnome Hunters, which have bows, and then moving on to the last card, we have the Gnome Skirmishers. And it's all very clearly laid out on the card. You can see how far you move in inches, your defense, your save, your wounds, and all of the weapons and special rules are on there as well. So pretty easy to follow along. I imagine it would be easy to get a younger person into the game. The rules look quite streamlined. So let's take a quick look inside the book. Now, honesty here, I have not read the rules cover to cover, and I have not played a game. So this is a first look rather than a full review of the game in itself. And the book has this, I would say, satin finish to it. The pages are all relatively thick, so they're thicker than they feel thicker than your glossy pages you tend to get inside of a lot of other rule books. I'm guessing that's the kind of paper they've used. But the quality feels very good. It almost has a kind of satin rough texture to it, and it's definitely thick enough that hopefully it will stand the test of time. I know a lot of people will think with recycled projects sometimes it's budget, but it definitely doesn't feel that at all. The quality of the artwork is lovely. There's painted miniatures rather in the book as well, nicely photographed. The rules are laid out really nicely. It's very clear under separate headings, and it seems very easy to follow, and I don't think it'll take you very long to pick up the game whatsoever. There's diagrams and photographs showing you how certain things work, and it's just really nicely laid out. As we get to the back end of the book, the scenarios are very clearly labelled, and we look like we're playing on a nice 3x3 surface, so a nice small gaming surface. And with those cards being so large, it means if you've got a standard gaming table, you should have plenty of space around the 3x3 gaming area of which to place your tokens and your cards for gaming. Now that is a lot of brown envelopes, and I get why they've done this. It would be really silly to put them in plastic baggies if you're looking to have a much more environmentally focused business. It does make it a little bit hard to know what's in the bags, but once you open them up, it becomes apparent pretty quickly. Now these look to be Cyocast, which would make a lot of sense with them being environmentally friendly. With Cyocast, any waste parts that you can turn back into beads and reuse them again. I've quickly blue tacked this dwarf together, so this is one of the hammerers, and the miniatures are quite nice. They're very cleanly cast. They have a little bit of flashing on them, as you would expect, and with it being Scio cast, it can sometimes be a little bit harder to clean up, but this one's pretty crisp and looks pretty good. So with Scio cast, you get the slightly bendable resin, which is sometimes a little bit hard when you're cleaning up, but also really, really good in terms of its durability. You're less likely to snap them when they've got that little bit of give. So we can continue looking through the bag. So these are the other dwarf hammer options. You get 2 in each bag. They're essentially the same sculpt with the odd variation in some of the miniatures, so a different head or a different arm or something like that. So moving on to look at some more of the dwarves, and these are the dwarf guardians, so the guys with the crossbows, and they do have separate legs and arms and heads on these ones. By doing that, I suppose it gives them greater chance to pose them in the sculpting process rather than going to that flat sort of cast. But again, they're relatively clean. There's not too much to clean up on these. Can't see any massive mold lines, and the quality of the sculpts themselves are very, very good. I'm very impressed with them. More of the dwarf guardians, so different sculpts yet again. They're quite tall, these dwarf miniatures, so they're quite stylized to the game itself rather than other sort of more stereotypical dwarven ranges out there. Now let's have a look at some of the gnomes. So you've got gnome hunters and gnome skirmishers. The skirmishers are the guys with the spears here, and again they're pretty good sculpts. I really like these actually more than the dwarves. The faces are fantastic, loads of character in these. These are quite unusual. They stand out more than the dwarves in terms of something unique. Remind me a little bit of sort of early elf war dancers. I know Grenadier Games used to do some wood elf war dancers way back in the 90s, and they looked a bit like this. More of those gnome skirmishers, and they're very, very nice little sculpts. I'll hopefully find some time to get around and paint one of these. So the gnome hunters are the gnomes but with bows this time, so obviously to match off against the crossbows of the dwarves. Again, very, very similar quality of sculpts, very, very nicely done. I'm assuming digitally designed. The quality of the faces is fantastic. I did notice in this pack some of the bits of resin are slightly different colour, but the resin itself is all pretty good. There's 4 different head designs as well, so you've got lots of variation in your miniature. Now again, towards the end of all the little baggies now, it looks like here we have the characters for the 2 factions. So we have the dwarf here, which is Captain Cragnair, and it's a really, really nice sculpt, this. Really, really nice. You've got the cape with the shield to go on as well. And then we also have Alto Mage Zika, which is the gnome character, the leader of the gnome side of the little starter box. Both really nice miniatures, a lot of character in this dwarf. I prefer him to the standard dwarf hammerers. He's pretty cool. I might get some paint on this one as well. And then the final baggie here has all of the wooden MDF counters which you need for the game. Again, sticking to that theme of being environmentally focused and using sustainable materials more than plastics, which is fantastic. So I think this is a really nice looking little set, and the game looks quite interesting, and I'll be tempted to get the miniatures built and maybe give it a go with my son if I can find time. It's so hard, there's so many good games out at the moment to try, but I'm pretty impressed with it overall. It looks very, very nicely presented. The miniatures are pretty good, especially the gnomes. I think the gnomes are a bit of a triumph really, and I'd like to find some time to paint them if I can. So I will pop a link in the video description to the Novus Mallum starter set over in Enviro Games. So if you're interested and you want to have a closer look, you can. Looks like it's £69 for this starter set, and it says there'll be 12 weeks due from order date. So I think they're making orders as they're needed, as required. It's obviously a very small company, and I imagine they're also looking after their waste and things as well. So thank you very much for the guys at Enviro for sending the game over for me to have a look at. I'll definitely be keeping an eye on it to see how it develops and how they add to the game, maybe with expanded factions or even new factions. And maybe it's piqued some interest from some of you as well. Let me know what you think in the comments. If you haven't already, why not head over to the Miniature Realms Discord? You can discuss this game and many other games. There's channels for nearly everything I've covered onto the channel and more, and it's a nice friendly place to discuss wargaming and the things in the videos and share your own things as well, which is something you can't do in the YouTube comments. If you're a regular of the channel and would like to support further, there is also a Patreon available, starting from $1 for the basic entry and moving up to higher tiers with painting tuition included as well. So take a look. The link again is in the video description. But thank you very much for watching. Take care, and I'll catch you soon.